Okay, so we're out scouting today, and there is a dammed up pond right here. Beaver have got it dammed up really well. There's a really fresh slide going right up here, straight up on top, and there's lots of fresh cut saplings up there that are being drugged down here. So if you were going to trap beaver here, this would be a very good spot to do that. And there's another slide straight over from this one, but it's a lot steeper slide. This one you could actually snare on if you wanted to. You could put a snare on this slide. If you didn't want to carry a 330 back here, you could put a snare right in that constricted area right there, and you could probably get that beaver pretty easy just by putting a caster mound up a little higher on the hillside here and get him coming and going. And that's probably what we're going to do. There's some real fresh sign right here. We're up above the steeper slide, which is right over here. This is a really steep one, but you can see he's even been chewing on this water vine here, coming up this slide here. But the other one's just a few feet away over there, so we'll use it for a trap location or a snare location. But he's been in here working pretty hard, and everything up in here is pretty fresh. He's been traveling through here. You can see the trails that he's actually made through here. You could probably snare him anywhere in here if you wanted to. He's been crossing this log. You can see the path right here where he's been going. And you can see some more fresh cuts right over there, right over here. He's been working this area over pretty hard. All right, so we came back down here into this beaver pond, and you can see lots and lots of fresh cuttings, lots of storage out here in the water for him to eat during the winter when it freezes up. You may even have a bank down under here somewhere close. But you can see he's got a crossover right there. And there's a slide right here going straight uphill toward my pack basket. And there's a couple of Ys. There's one that goes underneath that tulip poplar right there. There's a partial slide coming down. And what we want to do is we want to get him in the most restricted area. And there's a root right here. And it's kind of restricted right there at the slide. So that's where we're going to put a snare. So if you stay with me, I'll show you how to do that. All right, so I'm gonna do the best I can to put that snare right here. Oh, my camera, straighten out a little bit here. I'm on a baby tripod here. Now, I've got a good strong tree over on this side that I can put cable to. I've got a snare stand, one snare, and a couple cable ties here. And that's what we're gonna use. So let's get the snare undone first. We've got it wrapped and coiled so that it doesn't get messed up. Make sure it slides good and it's operational, and it is. We're gonna want that thing probably about that big, about that high off the ground is probably what we're gonna want. Something about 10 inches around, something like that, maybe a little bit smaller for him to walk into. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our snare stand out first, and we're gonna get it in the ground right here beside that root. We're gonna find a good soft spot to drive that into. Drive it in as deep as we can get it. If we hit a root, that's okay. These snare stands are adjustable, so that's not a problem. Now we got a whammy right here that we're gonna put on it just like this. And then we can kind of decide, once we get that whammy attached to this, and it's just a spring that screws on basically, just like that. Once we kind of get that attached, then we can kind of decide how big we want that snare to be. And we can get it right in the middle of that trail, just off the ground. I want that thing to be laying dead center of that trail and about 1.5 inches off the ground right here. Right here is perfect. He's gonna walk through that snare. That's a perfect set. Now we're going to cable it off to the tree beside us. Then we'll recheck everything. Just want to make sure where our set was going to be first. Then we'll have to decide what we're going to do with these cables, because I'm going to do loop-to-loop connections to make this cable longer. So that I've got one cable here. If I just do a loop-to-loop connection, just like this, then I made that one cable. Okay, if I come up to this tree up here on the other side of the bank, and I'm careful what I'm doing here, not to disturb too much, and wrap it around that tree just like that, and come through the loop on the other end That's going to give me a solid 7x7 cable attached to this snare. And I've got a D-link on the back side of the snare right here. All I have to do is connect that in, screw her down. And that's got my Trapper's ID tag on it. And then just lay that on the ground here. No big deal. Now, let's double check the snare, make sure what we got. And we'll kind of go look at it from up above and look down and see if it's exactly what we want. I feel like I want to come back just a tad in the trail with that and up just a shade, just like that probably. All right, so there is our snare. Hopefully you can see that. Pretty much centered in that slide, a couple, 3 inches up off the ground. Should get him coming or going that way. We're going to put a caster mound right up here in the leaves with some fresh cuttings. All right, we've got some Beaver caster here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a fresh stick like this one, and we're just going to shave it up. Get some bright color up here. Cut that one off. We'll make one more on the other side. Anything to give them a visual attractant of something's been up here fresh, that's what we want. So we're gonna lay that right there, and then we're just going to open up this caster, and we're gonna put a glob of it right here on top of these leaves, just like this, and wipe it on. We're gonna leave that be, and I would say that by tomorrow, we're gonna have us a beaver here. So, take a walk back here to the beaver pond where we set that snare and see what we can find here. About a 500-meter walk back from where we've got side-by-side parked. So, I'll get back with you when we get there. Okay, there's our beaver pond. It looks like it's partially frozen this morning. And up through here is where that beaver's been working. You can see there's a fresh cutting right there. Quite a few more fresh cuttings right over there. And the slide that we put the snare on is just over the top here. There's two slides here. One was really steep right there on the front side of the dam. There's one slide here. It's on the front side of this dam. And I think I see a beaver over there, okay? So we put our second snare on this other slide right here. And I can see our beaver sitting down there at the bottom in a trap. We snared him. Set that snare up right there if you'll remember right, and there he sits. We put that caster mound right beside that tree, and that's right where he's at. So we'll go dispatch him. We'll talk a little bit more about it. All right, so we put him down now, but what I want you to see is, I want you to see this cable snare, because he almost had that thing broke. That was a 7x7 cable snare, and he had that thing frayed out and almost destroyed overnight. So not catching him around the neck and having him by the body allowed him to really get after it. If we hadn't had him tied to this great big tree right here that there's no way he's going to cut down, it wouldn't have been long before he probably would have got away and had that snare wrapped around him. Okay, so let's talk about a couple things real quick now that we're back at the side-by-side with our beaver. we talked about how trashed out the snare was and how they are kind of a one and done deal. And the way I feel about that is this. If you are trapping a location that's deep in the woods, you know, a ways to walk, and you're trapping larger animals, sometimes it behooves you to be able to take something in that's very lightweight, like a snare, and be able to set that up and set several of them up if you want to, and not have a lot of weight in your pack basket when you're doing it, but catch larger game animals fairly easily, like this beaver. And I'm sure this beaver weighs over 40 pounds. I just packed him out a half a mile. I can guarantee he weighs that much. With that being said, you know, you could pack 330s back there, no problem, no question. But if you were going to set 4 or 5 or 6 traps back there instead of just the one snare that we set, 4, 5, 6 330s is a lot of weight to carry back there. Now you can carry one back there a day, build your line as you go, not a problem. I've always had an issue with snares being kind of a one and done, but they do have a place at certain times. Just remember, like I said, you know, as far as a survival tool goes, this is a very short term because this is one meal and that's it. Once you catch an animal on this thing, it is trash. You're not going to fix this snare unless you have the pieces and parts and cables to do it with you, which kind of negates the purpose of carrying ultralight type survival items. So remember that one snare equals one meal if you catch something in it. With that being said, could you carry a dozen snares fairly easily? Sure you could, and maybe that's a dozen meals. And in short term, that's good enough, no question about it. Longer term, snares are not going to be your best answer unless you have access to resupply, like you're running a trap line from a base camp or from a main, you know, cabin like I am, or a main home where you can resupply more snares and things like that. Then it's not a big deal. And again, it's easier to carry that in than it is a 330, especially if you want to set multiple traps around one pond or multiple sets around one pond. So that's just a couple things you should know about snares, things to think about. I don't think a lot of people realize what snares look like when an animal comes out of them and how badly torn up they really can be. And also the fact that, like I said, this is a 7x7 cable snare, and this guy had probably 4 of those cables already snapped. Might not have been too long before he snapped the rest of them. So something else to think about. Okay, so what else I want to talk about, or the other thing I want to talk about this morning real quick, while we're back here at the side-by-side and we just carried this animal out. We carried this animal out in our pack basket. You can see the blood in the bottom out there. And we carried our snare material out, things like that we didn't leave behind. And the pack basket is now empty pretty much, except for what's in the main pouch here up front. Again, this is a luring pack basket. I've got a knife on there. I've got some essentials here, but not too much. Most of my essentials ride in a waterproof bag that goes inside of this pack basket. So when I'm out running around, I've got essentials with me, emergency kit with me, basically the 10 C's with me all the time. However, the convenience of the pack basket is if I've only got to go 400 or 500 yards to a trap set off into the woods away from my waypoint or my side-by-side, I can drop the bag out, drop the small axe and the small folding saw that I carry in there out, and just take the basket with me to retrieve game. Come back, put everything right back in the basket again, and I'm ready to go. All right. I keep my pistol usually in a oiled sleeve in the basket as well, and in my pouch. And then I just stuff usually the saw and the axe to the outside, either on the same side or on either side. Wherever I got a free spot, I'm not really too picky about that. I just shove it in there and don't worry about it, okay? Well, that's kind of the advantage of the trap basket to me on a trap line, is that you can carry essential items that you need, but you can also dump those essential items somewhere temporarily so that you can use the basket for its intended purpose of carrying some traps to a location from, like I said, your side-by-side or something like that, or to carry animals out.